Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, nice to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
I am ready and raring to go.
All right.
Solve the problems of the world.
Exactly.
So what would we do all day if we weren't solving all these problems? I'd probably be hoeing my garden and looking after my tomatoes or something.
That's right.
There are some days when I think maybe I'd be more productive. No, I am dedicated. I know what I believe in. I know it's not a perfect solution to everything, but I know it's better than anything I've ever seen in government and anything I've ever seen in Washington. So I'm going to pursue it as you have on sound policy, and of course on this program we concentrate on foreign policy. Yesterday we talked about Iran, and we sort of a lot of crossed fingers, and we think, hey, they've just declared a victory,
yeah.
and they said that things have changed, and Pentagon declares victory in a non-war. It was no war, but they just said there was a victory, and they really weren't that type of a threat. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, and we commented on this, this is going to annoy a few people, annoy the deep state. It's going to annoy all the individuals who like friction in this buildup. And lo and behold, it's a whole different story. Actually, it's a little worse. A couple of weeks ago, there was a hint and a rumor of 120,000 troops going to. Now it's said that the Pentagon's asking for 10,000 troops over there, and but they don't tell us on what information they have, and they don't tell us where they're going to go. But CENTCOM is behind this. They want ground troops. They want 5,000 ground troops. So it's almost like it took about 24 hours to wake up and get the deep state a little bit more aggressive. They probably thought they were asleep for one day. Yeah. What's going on here? We better stop this thing. We certainly don't want peace to break out with the Iranians. So here we are. We're backing it again, and they're trying to scare the people, and people have made analogies to the intimidation and lies they told leading up to the Iraq War. Yes. Very similar in nature. And here we are once again, but it's not good, because my position in particular, for a long, long time, whenever I had been asked, what would you do? Just bring the troop home. Yeah. We just sent them in. We just marched in on these countries. We can just march out. All this Mickey Mousing around and trying to maintain an enemy so that they can keep the war manufacturers happy. Yeah. At the same time, we really don't want a real war. We just want a hot, cold war. Yeah. And of course, we will never have an accident happen. Maybe the enemy will. They said yesterday there was a person hinted, well, you better be careful because we should have people there in case the Iranians make some stupid mistakes. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we make mistakes by being in too many places with a limitation on resources, and I have said it'll come to an end, and this is not good, but it isn't war tomorrow, but it's setting the stage for a great deal of danger, and who knows what could come of it.
I think the first question that comes to mind when you see an announcement like we saw yesterday is what's the purpose? 10,000 troops for what? It was 120,000. I think it was on May 13th that was announced, that they were looking at 120,000. Excuse me. And now it's 10,000. The question is for what? The Iranian military has roughly 500,000 troops between their branches of service. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has about 125,000, and it also has a paramilitary force of about 600,000 volunteers. So you're looking at a good 1.2 million potentially men in arms in Iran. The 10,000 against that would be a tripwire, I guess, something of that nature. Otherwise, what's the point? Unless they have something else in mind.
Yeah, that's it. And the other problem we have, they have something else in mind, but sometimes the one hand of government has something on mind, and then there's the other hand that has something else, and I think that's why there's a lot of flip-flopping. I think a good example of this happened this week, maybe just yesterday or the day before. Pompeo was before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he was very strong in saying that the Iranians are bad people and they deal with Al-Qaeda. And that's why, he was building the case, for preparing for war and doing whatever is necessary. And then not too long after that, they talked to individuals who work for Pompeo in the State Department as well as Pentagon, and they said there's absolutely no evidence that the Iranian government has anything to do with al-Qaeda, and that's been the history. And we've talked about it so much that they wanted to be allies in getting rid of al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
And that's when we pretended we couldn't accept that, because the ultimate goal that has been set many, many years ago, and maybe it's been involved, 40 years, ever since we were involved in around trying to control their oil and installing the Shah and all these other things. But it's been more of a challenge. But the whole thing is that we have a policy there that is fruitless and worthless, and we need to obviously include a non-intervention with the Iranians as well as many other countries.
Well, Pompeo was playing the exact same role that the neocons played in the run-up to the 2003 war. Remember, that was all of the claims that Saddam Hussein had ties to bin Laden and ties to al-Qaeda. The purpose was just to scare the Americans into supporting the war. Imagine being a semi-intelligent State Department official and having your boss peddle such obvious and transparent lies. It must be pretty demoralizing. But you have to wonder, these 10,000 troops, if they go, where will they stay? We should probably talk about that. Where will they be based? Iraq's probably not going to be too keen on having them because they're trying to get rid of the 5,000 that they already have. The other thing is, what's the purpose? I suspect, and I read it somewhere, someone had a comment and it kind of flashed in my brain, that this new neocon brainiac idea, because they're always coming up with some schemes, I think they may be looking at attacking Syria, because they constantly talk about Iranian proxies in Syria, Iranian militias in Syria, by the way, who were killing al-Qaeda while we were arming them. If you take care of the Iranian militias in Syria, then they'll turn their sights to Lebanon, which is continually heating up. Then this great neocon idea might be that Iran may feel isolated and come to the table.
I think you have a perfect point there, because I think sometimes there's an incident for distraction and then they're off doing something else. And this whole idea that, once again, we got to get Assad. He's poisoning his people again.
Yeah.
And we have to stop him. He's done it twice before. Some of the pundits on TV are just horrible. They accept absolute factual evidence that he's done it before and he's getting ready to do again. And the only problem with our policies, and this was a military guy, the only problem is that we weren't thorough enough. We should have just totally destroyed the country and killed him and all this stuff. I mean, it's just so outrageous. But anyway, I think your point is well taken. But the Senate was in meeting yesterday, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and they had a vote. Chris Murphy, I think he's from Connecticut. He works with Senator Paul on a lot of these foreign policy issues. And now Murphy is a liberal, but he happens to be pretty good on foreign policy.
Yeah.
So he had a resolution. He brought it up for a vote. And once again, he said you can't go to war without permission from Congress. And I remember Rand had a really good statement one time against Pompeo. He literally pointed his finger. You can't do this without it. Well, everybody knows they can, but it's like you better not and you should not if you think anything of the Constitution. But they had a vote on this, and it was 13-9 to say that it doesn't matter, just let them go, so it never goes to the full committee. And all they're wanting to do is suggest, do you think we should consider the Constitution?
Yeah.
And I remember when I suggested that one time, how much mocking there was. What?
Yeah.
Support the Constitution? Not in this incident. We don't deal with that anymore.
Old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Well, the whole basis for these two announced troop increases is secret information.
Right.
When Bolton was talking about this new upcoming Iran threat, that he had to send the Abraham Lincoln and he had to send those B-52s out. We have some intelligence, we can't tell you what it is, that Iran's going after us. And likewise with this 10,000, new threats emerging, can't tell you what it is. And it makes you wonder, there's always this secret information. And, it's not often reported in the mainstream media, but thankfully an Israeli journalist did some digging and he found out that Bolton's source, at least for the first one, was Israeli intel. We've talked about this on the show. The Israelis are peddling some stuff. They want the U.S. to fight this war for them. They're peddling some phony intel, just like they did before the Iraq War. And it's interesting because right after that is when Bolton ran over to the CIA and brought these groups together. So maybe he's getting this bogus intel from the Israelis. He goes to the CIA and says, I want you guys to find this same conclusion or else.
You know, the astounding thing to us is the consistency of failure, you know, all this time. And it doesn't bother them. You know, they're like sociopaths. They don't have a conscience. They don't care. And they just continue to do it. And actually, it's slow action on this. But I think it's good because this wakes people up. It's total failure. More people now think that we shouldn't have been in Iraq fighting these wars, you know, and of course, certainly Vietnam, or they agree with that. And of course, yesterday I tried to make this point. We have to stop it before they start these wars. And here, you know, we might get the attention, we get a little publicity, and somebody comes up and say, oh, well, we shouldn't really be worried about the Iranians. And then the next day, somebody else is coming out, and then the suggestion you make is probably correct. Well, maybe they're getting ready to hit someplace else. So it isn't just Iran, it isn't just Iraq and just Afghanistan. It's that whole policy. It's the Middle East, and it is Syria and many other places, and this obviously involves Israel and many countries in Africa and all. But it's the overall position. It's maintaining a world empire is really what it's all about. And I think as long as the system that we tolerate and the people, and it functions to some degree, is that you can counterfeit money, people will take it, and we can continue to finance this. There would be none of this if there had not been devising this system where we have the world currency, we're the counterfeiters of the world, and we have the military might to defend that system, and nobody can touch us. And we manipulate our currency, but nobody else can. And if they don't behave, of course, then we're going to threaten them with military force and financial destruction through sanctions. But it's all going to come to an end because of the whole idea that failure. The monetary type of system we have has always failed in the past and will fail. The foreign policy will fail. Here we've had decades now of absolute failures and runaway costs, and yet you have a vote in the Senate and you just can't even get the Senate to vote and say, you know, if you're getting ready to go to war, you ought to check with us. I mean, it's almost like it's unpatriotic to do that. Patriotism now is avoiding the Constitution. Yeah. You know, if you say that you ought to follow the rules, then you're not a very good patriot, because you have to be a little bit flexible on this. The world's a tough place out there, and this is a modern age. Things are moving quickly, so we need to give more power to the executive branch and deny even the Congress from slowing it up. You know, it's the imperial presidency that is a big deal on these problems that we're facing. Yeah, and it's all a playground for John Bolton. You know, we like to refer people to, I think, because we read a lot of stuff every day to try to put the show together. I was reading a piece by our friend Joe Lauria. We've had him on this show before at Consortium News. He had a good piece on John Bolton when he was at the UN. Remember, he couldn't get an appointment. He was a recess appointment. He couldn't get confirmed. But he went to the UN, and very quickly he started throwing things and breaking things. And Joe wrote about it because Joe was a journalist at the UN at the time, and he was reflecting. But there was also a clip included of the speech that Bolton gave at the UN, and he talked about, I mean, I don't even know the word for it, but he said, there is no United Nations. The only country in the world that's powerful enough to make things happen, the only consequential country, is the United States of America, you know. How to win friends and influence people. Huh? Exactly. You know, what's terrible about it is for the moment, we are powerful and we can do it, and it worked out this way. But my point is, it's unsustainable and it's very bad. It's immoral. It doesn't follow our tradition, doesn't follow our Constitution, and therefore we shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't wait. And just because you can be a bully and tell the world how they have to live and what they have to do, and that we make them obey, doesn't mean that it's right. And that's why we are in a transition. We've morphed into this position. I think that it's really been downhill for 50 or 60 years, especially since World War II.
Yeah.
You know, all the wars that have been fought, and all the deaths, and all the inflation, and all the power. You know, the elimination of the Soviet Empire. Great news. Where's the peace dividend? I was an optimist, and there was. For a couple of years, there was some improvement. I like Gorbachev, and we started trading and talking and traveling to Russia. But now, once again, Russia is at fault for everything. I'm sure they're at fault for something, but what we have responsibility for as American citizens is our own government.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that if we come across some information that we think is correct, we should present it and try to convince others that this is true and right. And I happen to think the founders were on the right track in many ways on their policies, and they talked about non-intervention, and they talked about not running around the world looking for monsters to destroy.
Yeah.
But I think that's all worthwhile, because the other option is so horrible. It's more of this stuff, you know, more troops going here and there, and there will be an accident that will happen, or people will finally have some incident where they give up trust in our government, trust in our money, trust in our military, and you know, I think there was a bit of help with the division, or at least discussion between Bolton and Trump when the coup failed in Venezuela. And you say, "Oh, that's terrible. He was our guy. How could you not be for our guy to be in charge? Because we've already taken over the oil." So no, I think the failure of the coup is a sign that we ought to be cautious.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, this whole thing is about planning for Iran. And the New York Times had a piece I was looking at before we started, and part of all this troops, do I need 2,000, 10,000, 100,000, is the U.S. is trying to decide what kind of action it might take if Iran resumes its nuclear fuel production. That nuclear fuel production was frozen under the 2015 deal. They weren't doing anymore. So now that we pulled out of the deal, Iran says, okay, if the deal's off, we'll go back to what we were doing. And the U.S. is planning on an attack. So I was thinking maybe the problem is not that the deal was deeply flawed, like Trump said, but it was actually working too well. The Iranians were behaving themselves too well, and so that's why they had to throw a spitball at it and blow it up.
And make sure people understand they're really not back making nuclear bombs.
Yeah,
you know, they've increased their enrichment.
Yeah.
So, but that is enough to antagonize the neocons and drive them nuts.
Any increase. So I'll just close by saying there's a real danger that, you know, the Pentagon and the planners start believing their own propaganda. They said yesterday when we did the show, oh, well, our saber rattling scared them off and now they're backing down. That's really just for public consumption. But if they start believing it themselves, they may saber rattle a little stronger next time, a little more dangerous. And there will come a point where the whole thing bursts and you have a war. So this is the danger of believing the propaganda you're trying to get the rest of America to believe.
Well, very good. And once again, I would like to just close by restating the positions that we take in emphasizing how we deal with these kind of problems. And it's very simple. We should mind our own business, have a strong national defense, defend our liberties, set a good example for the world. And what we're doing over there now and threatening with these troops and sending troops in, and also, I think a very exasperating thing it must be for even the people in the administration is this on again, off again. You have no idea what they're doing. Yesterday, you know, they said that the war's over. The Iranians aren't that great a danger. And then today, you know, we're getting ready to send 10,000 troops. So a little bit of consistency, but that might be deliberate. You throw out a bone to the people who are more peace-oriented and say we're working toward peace, and the other hawks who want to, you know, force the confrontation. So we have to be alert. We'll do our very best to bring to you our views on this, always promoting and emphasizing the fact that a non-interventionist foreign policy, us mind our own business, is the best way to move toward peace and prosperity. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.